Hey, what's going on, guys? Zebs here, bringing you a different kind of video than my usual tutorials or speed arts or whatever. This is more of a discussion kind of video, and I definitely want your guys' opinions on this. I'm just gonna state some of my opinions on the topic and kind of go over the pros and cons of everything and just kind of talk about it and just have a discussion about it and see what your guys' thoughts are down below. So let's get started. So the question of this video is, should you join COD teams or esport orgs or any type of organization? Now this is a touchy subject because I'm going to assume a lot of you guys are already in orgs, so you guys are all saying, well, of course yes. But then I kind of look at it as in what are the pros and cons of joining an org? Should you invest your time into this? So I kind of made a little list. I'm going to go over the pros and the cons. So for me, the pros would be exposure depending on the org you join, which I'll get into later. You get an opportunity to meet new people, so maybe get some feedback and more help on your designs, which I feel like is good for more beginner designers. It's good to get yourself out there and meet new people to try and learn. And then it also provides practice because you're going to be designing a lot for the players and the editors or whoever might need designs. But that's pretty much the only pro I could really think of besides the rare few orgs that pay you for it. So that kind of got me thinking, is it really worth to invest all of this time just for a little exposure and to rarely meet some cool people? So I kind of made a con list to kind of think about it a little bit more. And my con was mostly there's no income. There's a few orgs that do pay, but for the most part, there's no income from it. There's a lot of work for little exposure. Now this also depends on the tier of org that you're in, which I'll go into a little bit. But I'd say for most of us, we're not in these great orgs. Most of us, I would say, we're probably in your average or below average org. So you're really not going to get a lot of exposure from it. So, and then there's also the chance of just being used by the players and stuff, them being unappreciative, which we've all known this, we've all been there, they kind of just expect it just to pop out of nowhere, it takes zero effort. And then you also have the competition of being replaced easily by someone who's better. But those are basically the cons I came up with here. And thinking about the pros and cons, it kind of just got me thinking more about well, is it worth joining an organization or esport organization? Now before I continue with this, I kind of want to go over my opinion on tiers. Now in my opinion, I think there's a low tier, a medium tier, and a high tier of different orgs. Now for low tiers, it's mostly just brand new orgs just out of the oven, and they don't really know what they're doing a whole lot. They're just trying to get people to get it started. Now these orgs are kind of good for beginner designers who have been designing maybe less than a year or so that they can get that practice and they can get that feedback and that little exposure. But at that rate, I don't think you need exposure, I just think you need to practice more. So that's kind of what I think low tiers are for. So for some people, low tiers are actually good for them, because when you're starting out, you shouldn't expect income or anything of that sort. So definitely low tiers are good for people who are just beginning, which makes sense. And then we have the medium tier. Medium tier are kind of people who have a built-up name, but they're not you can get some exposure from it and all of that, but it's not some great team or org. Now I made a few examples like this so you can kind of get the idea where I'm going from here. So I put down teams like Psycho, Saw, Darth, High, Lavidia. These are all medium tier orgs that you'll get exposure from, no doubt, but I still feel you're not gonna get paid being in there. You're still gonna get used by the players, and you're gonna get some exposure, but not a whole lot. So you also gotta consider, is it worth investing all of your time for these designs just for a little exposure? Now, and then there's also a high competition for these medium tier because everyone's trying to get in these so they can work their way up to the higher tiers. Now for the higher tiers, I kind of put the kind of the ones everyone knows about, the ones that basically if you're in it, you're pretty well known, you're set, you have a lot of potential. And for that, I put Soar, Phase, Red, Obey, Era, and Dare. Now for say Soar and Phase and Red, these are all really competitive orgs. I guess all of them are, but these are ones where you're gonna be designing high-end stuff. You're gonna have a lot of exposure from it because of the amount of size of these orgs. So in this case, there's also a chance of getting paid in these orgs too. So that's why I definitely think these high tiers are worth it. But is it also worth investing in these medium tier ones for little exposure when you could do something else to get exposure? So that's kind of my thoughts on it. For me, I feel it's not really worth joining these orgs unless there's a return for it. And like 9 out of 10 times, the return isn't even there for you. You put all this work in for a gamble of exposure. Except for the high tier. High tier, you're in it, you're set, basically. As long as like you prove that like, yeah, your designs are top dog, you're gonna be okay in those. But I kind of also wanted to touch the difference between a COD org and an esports org. So everyone's been in a COD org. That's more of like, your trick shotting, your editing, your little spinners, doing little spinneroos in Call of Duty for their montages. For me, I feel like those are a waste of time. That was back in 2012, like it's not as popular as it once was. So like you're not really gonna get anywhere doing those. I feel like more of the lower tiers and some of the medium tiers are more into that still, just because honestly I don't know why they are. Like that's outdated. Not many people are into it now. And then there's also the esports org, which I feel like that's more of where the money's at, because they have to pay players to travel and compete. And when that comes the responsibility of jerseys and advertising and buying photographers and all of that. So this is where you can offer your services. But obviously, like, you can't just go out and travel and do the team's photography for free. You need money from that. So that's where the org comes in and pays you. For designing jerseys, that's a lot of work. That's where they can come in and pay you. And you're also going to get exposure for that, just due to the fact that your jerseys are going to be shown at these LAN events. And if they stick out, if they're really good jerseys, they're gonna be like, wow, that team really like stands out from the others. So that's where I feel like you have a bit more open room in esport orgs to try and finesse your leaders or whoever to get some income out of it. I've done this a few times with some orgs, it's worked out, and other times it hasn't. But it's still worth a shot to try and get that income, because in my opinion, I feel like it's really not worth investing all of my time just for these players and all of that, when there's little gain for me, because they're in there to gain to go pro. Like, what for me, I guess the only thing would be practice, but like I could just practice on my own on my free time. I don't have to be demanded by other people to do it. So I feel like, in my opinion, I don't think joining orgs and all of that are worth it unless there's a benefit to it, which in my case would be the income from it, because I can practice whenever I'd like. I don't really want to practice for an org that I don't really care too much about necessarily. Now, there's also the exposure, which I talked about a little bit, which I feel like it doesn't really pay off that much, all that work for little exposure, unless you're in some medium tier orgs or if you're in the high tier. So I feel like personally it's not worth it, but I just kind of want to get your thoughts on all of this, because I know a lot of us are in these orgs and these teams and whatever, so you guys might have different thoughts on it, and I just want to hear what you guys have to say on it. That was just my thoughts and opinions on it. If you guys, I'm an open-minded person, so like I'm down to have discussions about it and all of that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. If you want more of them, let me know down below, and if you don't want them, I can get rid of them, and I can just stick to tutorials and speed arts if you guys want. So it's been your host today, Zebs, and I am out. Peace.